start to identify how these proteins cycle.
And estimated that by the middle of the century,
actually makes your stress hormones go down faster.
Welcome to Brainwaves, a new podcast exploring big ideas, produced at the University of Colorado Boulder. I'm Paul Bake. This week we're talking about artificial intelligence. What is it? What are some of the limits of AI? And when do the ethics of AI cross the line? We're going to be talking to a couple of experts, including Google's Abigail Posner, to find out more. We'll also get your thoughts. Let's start with a dictionary definition, courtesy of Apple. Hey Siri, define artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence means the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and translation between languages.
In short, things like figuring out what I mean by define artificial intelligence, looking it up, and reading me the answer. It's cool, but it also presents questions about how we are going to handle it. Whatever you're thinking, artificial intelligence is coming, and it's coming to corners of life you might not have ever guessed. Someone who's thought a lot about all that is Abigail Posner. She's head of strategy at Google's brand unit, and she presented at the Leo Hill Leadership Speaker Series at CU Boulder. Executive producer Andrew Sorensen spoke with her at her hotel.
First, let's get a quick definition of what we're talking about. Earlier in the show, we used Siri to define artificial intelligence. How would you define artificial intelligence?
So I would say it's leveraging computing power to understand how human beings are creating patterns, and then taking those patterns and turning that into analyses for us.
And there are a ton of applications of this all over the world. Where are you seeing it? What do you think is most interesting in terms of how people are using artificial intelligence?
I mean, that's a huge question because I think it's being used for so many different worlds and it's continually evolving. We use it every day in my teams, actually, to understand how videos, usually brands videos, are performing on YouTube. But I'm also highly interested in it with regard to fashion. In fact, I just posted something today about how, with regard to fashion, it's going to change the fashion industry tremendously. It's going to add so much value, and yet at the same time, it's never going to take the place of the designer. It's never going to take the place of the true creative thinker. Because yes, it creates patterns and quickly, and does a lot of the scut work that we humans don't really like to do. But then it gives us all this thinking and all this understanding of our behavior so that we can then take those leaps of imagination that only the true creative human can do.
For the average person out there, maybe they're a small business owner or they're just kind of a person who's interested in technology generally, what do you recommend they do to kind of brush up on what artificial intelligence is to get ready for what a lot of people might say is kind of a coming revolution?
Google it. Honestly. I mean, I'm not just saying that because Google is focused on that, and I think we all know that. It's been recorded, but it's that really Google is a great resource for an understanding from, AI for dummies to, the most intricate of it. So there's just so many great articles out there, so many great stories. I would go on to Think with Google, which is our hub where we publish information and stories about the work we've done when we do most of anything for clients, but particularly AI or machine learning. So there's just a wealth of information. I wouldn't be scared of it. I think people are scared of it or confused by it, or they remember seeing movies like Artificial Intelligence. I think it was a movie, right? Like back in 2000, right? So I think that people automatically fear what they don't understand. And there are so many voices out there to provide that explanation, much more intelligent than me, that could really bring it to life for people, no matter what industry they're in. It's not something to be scared of. It's something that's actually going to help us spend the time doing the creative stuff that we really love to do.
And that's been a huge conversation. We've seen AI pop up in journalism. We have bots that are literally writing articles. In the advertising world, it's becoming a bigger conversation. In art and fashion, what is it that AI can do for us in those human-centric industries without pushing out the humans?
Well, as I said before, I mean, first I should caveat this by saying I am not an expert in AI. I am very fortunate to be working side by side with people who are much more expert at it than me. However, as I said before, I think the simplest way to understand it is it really can look en masse at data and at people's behavior in the digital space and create patterns. And those patterns are something that we would have probably done as human beings anyway, but now they're doing it that much faster. As I said before, I think there's a general tendency of many humans to be fearful of technology and be fearful of what the future holds. And there are so many tasks that we don't do anymore, that computing does for us, that maybe 100 years ago, if we told somebody there was a machine that was going to add up math for you, people would be like, oh my God, the machines are taking over, right? So I just think it's becoming an understanding of the guts of it, and recognizing that by no means is it something that wants to usurp human creativity and human ingenuity. If anything, it will help us do that much more of it because we're not burdened by the menial tasks that we have to do to get us to the place where we can then take those leaps of imagination.
And you mentioned the term machine learning a little bit earlier. Correct me if I'm wrong, but for the folks at home, it's kind of this idea that you've programmed a computer to start making decisions based on the decisions the humans have already made. Is that about right?
Yes, and it looks at our patterns of behavior, or it looks at patterns of well, I guess, yeah, behavior is probably the best way of saying it. You know, I think about the, some of our tools, for example, that we use for my particular team that looks at thousands of video ads, thousands on YouTube, and how people have responded to those ads, and can just take those and very quickly ascertain whether certain ads in certain categories performed well or not.
And with that, I kind of wonder, is there a limitation there because there are limits on humans, there's a limit on our judgment, and sometimes we don't have the best judgment? How, in this conversation, have you and the people that you work with, really smart people, tackled that conversation of humans have biases, humans have shortcomings, and sometimes we look at really weird things on YouTube. How do we avoid a future where just every company is using tons and tons of cat videos because they get really good play on YouTube to advertise to us?
Right. Well, I think we have to take a step back and realize that we human beings are discerning and quite smart. And we realize that there are many elements at play when developing something, whether it's fashion, a video, new technology, a TV series, whatever, right? So here's an example. I once wrote an article for my blog, Beauty Skew, about how AI was judging a fashion contest. Now, here's a real problem, because guess who won? Caucasian women. Not women of color, right? So you're saying, how can that be? Well, because think about who's also sometimes creating these tools, right? So you always have to be cognizant of who's behind the creation of the tools or who's behind the data. We ourselves are going to add an element of cultural bias sometimes when we create these formulas. So we know, because of situations like this, that we can't take everything at face value, that we have to add all the different lenses when we analyze data.
As we program in AI and machine learning into our everyday lives, we still very much need humans to kind of guide the process and say, hey, wait a minute, let's look over here as well. Absolutely.
I'm smiling. You people can't see that, but I'm smiling as I speak. You can hear me laugh because I think there's also this belief that as computers take over, machines take over, that they're really there to usurp human beings. No, it's human beings that create the algorithms to help human beings. Do I think that sometimes technology can go awry? Sure, but that's always been the case, right? Since the advent of the fire or utensils like, knives or the printing press, there's always a moment when things can go awry. But for the most part, human beings as a species have developed technology to help us progress, help us do the things we want to do and not the stuff we don't want to do. So no question there that if we understand and think about technology and think about machine learning through the perspective of this is to help human beings, then I think we can already say to ourselves, let's not worry too much about it. And then add that other layer of course, nothing gets looked at or nothing gets examined or, tossed around without the human being at the center of it. Because ultimately, the technology is for humans to help other humans be more human.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Abigail Posner, thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure.
We wanted to get your thoughts on artificial intelligence. Helpful time saver or the first step in the takeover by our robot overlords? We sent our editor, Dirk Martin, out into the world to find out.
When I say artificial intelligence, what comes to mind?
It's a little bit scary sometimes. I start thinking about, are computers going to actually be able to think for themselves? Are they going to come alive? What's our society going to look like? But at the same time, it's really exciting because we have this ability to create things like chatbots that can help run marketing agencies and do all these really fun things because they can learn.
Right off the top of my head, I'd say taking human jobs.
It means that a lot of things are being taken over by technology, and a lot of things like jobs and stuff like that, real humans are losing to it.
I saw the Terminator, and I'm sorry, but that's all I got.
That's Erica O'Grady, Garnet Scott Thompson, Emily Furlan, and Campbell Dawson on Pearl Street Mall in Boulder, Colorado. Here to talk more about this and some of the deeper questions around AI, Harry Surden, Interim Executive Director of Silicon Flatirons, a think tank of sorts for law, technology, and entrepreneurship. He's also an associate professor at the University of Colorado Law School and an expert in AI. Harry Surden, welcome to Brainwaves.
Thank you for having me.
So how does Siri's definition hold up for you?
I think that's actually a pretty good definition. That's similar to a definition that I use that involves focusing on the types of problems that AI is designed to solve. So when I think of AI similar to Siri, I think that it involves using technology to solve problems or make automated decisions for tasks that, when humans do them, require intelligence.
You've worked with interesting applications of AI in the law. Can you tell us a little bit about what that intersection looks like?
Before we understand that, it's important to understand what AI is both capable of doing and not capable of doing.
Okay, let's go into that briefly.
Yeah, so importantly, a lot of people I think have a misperception of AI as involving thinking machines or cognitive computers. And today's AI technology is decidedly not the case. So a lot of those visions come from the movies or television or books where people see C-3PO or advanced robotics that can think abstractly. By and large, today's artificial intelligence technology works by detecting large patterns in large bodies of data and using those patterns to do useful results. So when you look around and you see computers playing chess or computers driving cars, by and large, it's by advanced pattern detection, but it's certainly not the strong AI, as they call it, view of abstract thinking machines that can talk philosophically about abstract concepts or think at a level that meets or surpasses humans. And in my opinion, and I look at the evidence quite a bit, we're not anywhere close to that.
Okay, so let's get back to that law question. What does that look like, AI in the law?
Yeah, so when you're thinking of AI as advanced pattern matching, you actually see a lot of that in law. So I like to think of it as occurring in three different places in the law. In the administration of law, so those are government officials or agencies who apply the law, by the practitioners of law, these are lawyers, and the users of law, you and me and corporations who the law applies to. So in the administration of law, we are starting to see it quite a bit. So for example, judges who in the criminal sentencing context who are sentencing criminal defendants, deciding their bail, the length of sentence, are now relying on reports that use this advanced pattern matching, this machine learning, to make recommendations about a particular defendant's risk of reoffending or how dangerous they are based upon past patterns. Those have various problems that we can talk about later if you want, but that's one thing to note. So in lawsuits, attorneys frequently have to look through large amounts of documents, often to find evidence that is relevant to the lawsuit. In the past, this was largely done manually by attorneys paging through piles of documents. Increasingly, lawyers are able to use machine learning, artificial intelligence systems to quickly sift through thousands or millions of documents to find those that are most likely relevant. And then attorneys are then brought in to take a look at those documents that the machine has identified to give them a closer second look.
You've also been working on questions around technologies like self-driving cars. What questions need to be answered before that technology is ready for the world?
So I think the self-driving car technology is pretty well advanced. In terms of technology, one of the biggest issues holding it back is actually what they call the snow problem. The self-driving cars don't work very well on snowy roads for all sorts of reasons, mostly because the sensors that they use get fooled when the road markings and various other features are covered over, and they can't quite figure out where they are. They are making some progress on that. There's new types of sensors, such as ground-penetrating radar that can see through the snow, but until they solve that, I think by and large we're going to see self-driving systems in very restricted settings, either restricted in terms of weather or restricted in terms of area, like on highways that have been well cleared of snow.
So it's not really about a human driver understanding traction and when to use the accelerator and when not to. It's really about what can the car see.
That's correct. And one thing that people forget about is they think about the safety implications of self-driving cars, but it turns out that humans are actually very bad drivers. Humans get tired, they get inebriated, they're distracted by their phones. So I think we always have to compare the performance of self-driving cars against the mistakes that humans frequently engage in. 90% of accidents are caused by human error today. So I think improvements on those grounds in terms of automation of self-driving cars is the appropriate comparison.
So there's an element of trust here as well, that human beings who have maybe a high opinion of their driving skills need to be able to trust a machine to do it better.
That's correct.
And that's kind of a blow to the ego.
It is, but we see good examples of this in the aviation industry. So for years, commercial flying has been largely involves autopilot. So that the pilots are still involved, but even their steering is heavily mediated by electronics and predictive mechanics. So the pilots rely very heavily, for example, on the autopilot to land a plane in complete fog. A human can't do that.
So what are some of the ethical concerns about AI?
I think there are several ethical concerns that are important to pay attention to. So if you think again about AI as this advanced pattern matching system, one of the things that you can figure out with a high degree of probability are certain facts such as disease status or somebody's sexual orientation that they haven't publicly revealed by looking at some related facts such as their circle of friends or where they tend to go on a regular basis, if you have location information or the kinds of things they say. And that's the kind of thing that AI is enabling. It's called privacy inferencing. You're inferring private facts about people that they have not publicly revealed. Another issue that is starting to get attention are issues of bias that historically discriminated groups often receive disproportionately bad outcomes on some of these systems. And the reason is it's often your systems are built based upon the data that's put in. And if there are biases in the data due to historical or institutional practices, these biases get reflected in these computational systems in ways that are very subtle and hard to detect. So I think that's another major issue. And then a final issue I'd bring up is the displacement of mechanical and routine jobs, which I think is something that our society has to grapple with. I think in the long term, AI is going to create more jobs than it displaces, but certainly in the short term, a lot of jobs such as drivers, taxi drivers or truck drivers are going to have part of their positions automated away fully or in part. So it's think about what happened to travel agents when the internet came around. Now, I'm not one of these people that think work generally is going to go away. I think it's generally a failure of imagination. AI is going to create new types of jobs in the future that we just can't think about. But certainly in the short term, as with any major technological change, whether it's automation in factories or automation on the farm, large groups of people get affected, and I think our society has to think about how to mitigate those consequences.
So we've talked about some of the negative potential impacts of AI. What's positive about AI? What can we look forward to?
Yeah, so I'm very optimistic, and I think AI, with all its downsides, also has huge upsides in terms of medicine. I think we're going to see amazing medical breakthroughs. I think we're going to see amazing breakthroughs in economics, in law. It can lead to more access to justice. A lot of people are, especially people of low income means, are very underserved by the lawyering community, and to the extent that they could get simple but basic automated legal answers to their problems, that might help. So I think AI is going to bring a lot of benefits and a lot of new jobs, but along with some of the costs.
Harry Surdin, thanks for joining us today on Brainwaves. Harry Surdin is an associate professor at the University of Colorado Law School. Thanks for joining us on Brainwaves. I'm Paul Bake. Listen in next time when we talk about pain and new discoveries that might make us all feel a little better. Thanks to Andres Belton for creating our introduction. Dirk Martin and I produced today's show. Andrew Sorensen is our executive producer. See you next week on Brainwaves.